The name of this presentation, the title is A Proven Process to Improve Your Students' Soft Skills. I'll be your host. I'll be your presenter, Art Janwick. I'll be talking about our product. This is a product demonstration, right? So I'll be talking about our product, but I'm not going to just hammer that idea and try and hard sell you on it. I more or less want to share with you the soft skills, like the process through which you can improve your soft skills, and obviously talking about some of the research and things that we've done. But my overall goal here is to just kind of get you thinking about your processes too, and what you're currently doing, and then also what's the plan moving forward. What's the plan moving forward through the rest of this year, but this fiscal year, this calendar year, this school year, however you see it, but then also moving into the future as we move forward through education and the workplace in general, right? Because it's changed so much. So with that, enough of the housekeeping. I will jump in and get you going. So first thing I want to ask, and this one's more rhetorical. I'll have a question that I want you to type in the chat in a little bit. But what's changed, right? What's changed? And so in a word, everything. Going back a year ago, we had no idea what to expect, and with COVID-19, and so we shut everything down. Right, our school, everything was just, let's shut it down. Let's see what's going on. Let's figure this out. And we weren't really prepared to go completely virtual. So in a snap, everything changed, and yet we weren't really ready to go completely virtual. And it was tough for schools and students and parents and families. And so now that there have been some changes to allow students to work remotely, we're starting to get back into it. In certain states, there's certain areas that are different than others. We're all over the place, some hybrid, some in person, some virtual. Okay, but we want to make sure that moving forward, putting processes in place to have a hybrid learning for students to be at school physically at times, and then in their homes at other. In fact, I just got off the phone. We're located in Wisconsin, right? The Midwest, a lot of snow. A teacher was talking to me yesterday that they're talking about no more snow days, because now when we do have snow days, we're going to be virtual. So that's going to be different, right? As kids are growing up, at least they'll get out of school sooner, but. Okay, and so before we get into the nitty gritty of the presentation, I want to ask you guys, why do people lose their jobs? Right, before we dive into it, I want to get you thinking about this. So go ahead in the chat and type some of the reasons why people lose their jobs. It's someone something you've heard, something you've experienced. Why do people lose their jobs? Don't show up. That's one reason, right? No show, no call. Don't perform. Can't get along with others. Industry change. Chronic absenteeism. Bad communication skills. That's a good one. They place their trust in people or corporations who don't care about them. They don't understand conformity, teamwork, looking busy, right? Some people have a PhD in looking busy. Poor ability to communicate, right? Yeah, that one's funny. That one threw me off, looking busy. I love that one. Right, and the list goes on. And I know there's one in there, industry change. And there's obviously certain circumstances, right? A business closes or something like that. But for the vast majority of people, if you talk to HR directors, if you talk to business owners, if you talk, right, like managers that are working directly with reports, the reason people lose their job for the most part are the lack of these employability skills, these soft skills. Okay. And soft skills are needed. Now it's interesting, this presentation, because I talk about soft skills in general, and we usually talk about like the soft skills that are needed, and we list, we talk about attitude, communication, team, all the things that you've listed here in the chat. But what's really interesting is that's still there, right? Absolutely, that really hasn't changed much in the sense of what employers are looking for. But what has changed is the perspective in which we talk about soft skills, not only for the workplace, but now when we switched everything off last year, students working from home. When you work from home, that requires a different skill set as well, right? Let me explain. Instead of being in the classroom with you guys and with staff and teachers and oversight, they're working at home, possibly with parents or other siblings, right? There's families with different siblings. So then you have a fourth grader working with a first grader, and then they're on the same internet connection, and they're working on other tasks and projects. This requires a different focus, the ability to plan and organize, the ability to think critically, keep a positive attitude, because right when that Wi-Fi goes down, like, stop streaming Netflix, right? This is a completely different circumstances. The variables have shifted. So implementing a process for soft skills and incorporating these skills are critical not only for their future work, but their current work now. So it's even more needed, one could argue. Right. So these soft skills were very important to employers while students and we were preparing these students to enter the workforce before the pandemic. But now they're super critical at this very moment for your student success currently, ASAP. So implementing a process to incorporate these skills can have an immediate impact as well as for the future. Right. And so why the soft skills? I have young kids, so they always ask why. So I tend to have to look for the answers. Why? Well, the biggest reason that we've come across is that 85% of job success comes from having well-developed soft and people skills. And only 15% of job success comes from technical and the hard skills, the knowledge. And this comes from a study from the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching in 1918. And the question came through, can I record this presentation? It is actually being recorded, and we will be able to have this replay out. So just as a footnote, a side note, we will be recording this and we'll absolutely be able to send that out. But this study came from the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching in 1918. So here we are, right? 102 years later, still talking about the same things and incorporating or not incorporating soft skills into the workplace, right? Into the world of education. And having a process to do that, a proven process, is going to be super critical. So let's talk about definition. Let's define the terms. So soft skills, personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. Man, that is a simple definition for a complex set of competencies. But this definition of soft skills looks really eerily similar to what that study talked about from the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, right? About that 85-15 points to success, because employers are looking for things like what? Attitude, critical thinking, all of the things that you guys mentioned, why people get laid off or fired, or they leave their jobs or they lose their jobs. That's what employers are looking for. How do we know this? Well, because employers were surveyed. They were asking what learning outcomes they rate as important. A study from the American Association of Colleges and Universities showed that 9 out of the top 10 skills that employers rate as important are soft skills. And I know this is a poor looking graph. That's because I had to jam it on this screen, but bear with me, right? It lists the top 10 learning outcomes that employers rate as important. This was a study done, again, by the American Association of Colleges and Universities. So here they are asking employers, saying, hey, what skill sets do you rate as important? And so the employers, they said, well, let me tell you, I'm looking for communication and teamwork. And I'm just reading down the list, right? Communication, teamwork, communication, decision-making, critical thinking, problem solving, right? The second from the bottom here, working with numbers and stats. That's math. That's a hard skill. But 9 out of the top 10 are all these skill sets that employers are looking for. And the reason employers are looking for these skills are because individuals need to be able to work together because it's that turnover process. If you look at a P&L statement of a company, their highest expense typically is salaries and benefits, right? Typically. Now in 20 years, maybe talk to me, there's gonna be like robots doing everything. So that's neither here nor there. But right now, you look at a profit and loss statement, it's benefits, it's salaries. So if that's your current employees, and then all of a sudden you hire someone that's a bad hire, and then you get that churn, you get that turnover process, that's really expensive. Hire someone, you train them to do a job, 2 weeks later, they're gone. You hire someone, you train it, they're gone. It becomes a cycle that's really, really expensive. But see, some companies hire for reason one and some for reason 1 and 2. Your composure, your manners, your education, your certifications, your credentials. But most companies lose people because of reason number 3. The lack of all of these skill sets: commitment ethic, stress management, self-management, motivation, communication. Okay. And again, when we talk about it from the workplace perspective and preparing students for the world of work, obviously this is very, very important. But again, when we had to switch over everything in March 2020 and just shut it off and then say, all right, hey, let's maybe get back to school in the fall. Let's maybe not, depending on the state, depending on the region, depending on, how things are done. That looks really different. And these skill sets are really, really important. But see, emotional intelligence is the base. Soft skills is a necessity, but emotional intelligence is what needs to happen for learners to understand the importance of these soft skills. So here's just one example of what I mean by that. So here's a pyramid, and at the top is the end goal, is the competency that we want a student or an individual to have. So attitude, for example. Well, underneath attitude, because that's the end goal, we want somebody to have a positive, a good attitude. What are the attitude competencies? What are the things that make up that? Well, importance of a positive attitude, keeping your focus, right? All these things you see right here. Doing your best, responding to guidance. But underneath those attitude competencies, they're rooted in emotional intelligence. And you see those over on the right-hand side. Self-esteem, interpersonal awareness, empathy, self-management, self-improvement, self-control. And so this base of emotional intelligence allows individuals to take the step up to attitude competencies, which then in turn obviously exhibit the behavior of attitude. So you can imagine, right? You can't get to the tippy top of the pyramid unless you start at the base and you climb. Now, how quickly you ascend depends on how quickly you attain these competencies. But to reach that desired behavior of attitude, you need to understand what comes underneath. And so this is just one example. I just picked attitude, but we have, all of the competencies that I'll break down for you in the next 20 minutes, especially as I start to talk about, assessments and curriculum, are rooted in this proven process, this research, talking about validity and reliability with each one of these competencies. Okay. Because there is some gray, and it's a sliding scale, but there are 2 types of individuals. Okay. These are the spectrum. This is the way right, way left, right? The first is a well-adjusted individual. This is someone who has a lot of overlap between self-image and reality, right? Their self-image is who they think they are, right? And if we look at it in relationship to soft skills, who do I think I am? I think I have a great attitude. I'm a team player. I communicate really well. I'm great to collaborate with, I perform really well. I all that stuff, right? So reality sets in, and others can agree with that and say, yeah, Art works really hard. He's a team player. He communicates well. He's got a good attitude. Well, that's good, right? And this is where we want to be, and this is where we want to help our individual students be, and all. That's great. But the other side of the spectrum is a poorly adjusted individual. And this is, right, a little bit of overlap between self-image and reality. So this is someone who says, I got a great attitude, I work well on a team, I communicate clearly. And Matt, awesome, Dave. I saw your chat come through. Thank you so much. Matt Schmitz in the chat room, right, is like, no, Art he's terrible. Like I dread when he calls me, or I have to do this joint webinar with him with ACT in partnership. And I'm not looking forward to this because list the things, right? That's the reality of it. And again, it's a sliding scale because some days I kind of feel like this, and then other days I feel like this. And then the Venn diagram spreads out throughout, the years. But eventually what we're trying to do is identify poorly adjusted individuals and help them, give them the techniques, the tools, the knowledge to shift them into a well-adjusted individual. Okay. The poorly adjusted individuals have an opportunity. That's the thing, is it's not static. These poorly adjusted individuals have an opportunity to move into being well-adjusted. Okay. It's about forming habits. It's about understanding the knowledge and certain behaviors, and understanding, all of these competencies that I'm talking about with the pyramid of attitude. Right. And so how do you help a poorly adjusted individual? Does it look different with distance learning? Okay. Why do you need to assess and teach soft skills? And the key word there is and, right? And the answer lies in shifting the individual from the poorly adjusted individual into the well-adjusted. Because soft skills in general, a lot of the things that we've seen, what happens is it becomes very subjective. Okay, it becomes very, very subjective without using a research-based tool to measure, without using proven strategies, without, just like anything, without using things that are proven to work and have the clout, right? They have the meat behind them, then it's fluff. And so what if we think differently about these things? Once you have an objective measure of soft skills, we can use that as a springboard to teach the skills necessary for the individual. And so what we talk about is going to be, as far as our steps, there's 3 steps. But what we talk about with a proven process is all rooted in what I'm sharing with you, as far as like that attitude pyramid with the different competencies. Our assessment and curriculum is research-based. So everything's rooted in that proven process, but I'm sharing it with you because, again, is Conover the only tool? Are we the only company in the world that does this or that? No, right? No, and we won't ever be, because there's constantly others that are out there. But again, what I'm sharing with you is the process. So what you can do is you can take this process, you can take this framework, and then apply it to other things, right? Number 1 is a pre-assessment. So identify, when it comes to an objective measure of soft skills, identify where an individual is at with those soft skills. Because if you're able to do that, then you can differentiate the instruction. Right? You can differentiate that curriculum triggered off of that initial assessment. So that way Susie goes through attitude because she scored low in attitude. Right? Johnny goes through teamwork because he scored low in teamwork. Vivian goes through communication because she scored low in communication. And then once they go through curriculum, they go through the training modules that they need to learn explicit off of that pre-assessment. Then they can go through the post-assessment and identify growth. All right. And so how do you address this problem? And I've touched on a lot of these already, but research-based assessment tool, right? How do you implement this three-step process of pre-assessment, curriculum, post-assessment? Research-based assessment is clutch. It's critical, needed. It leads to improved academics, productivity, outcomes. You want to make sure that it's not cumbersome to implement. One of the big, especially nowadays, one of the biggest hurdles that we've seen and heard from staff, like teachers, educators, I mean, heck, everyone, is as we jump on these Zoom calls, as we jump on these meetings, as we do these webinars, they're great, right? But people are working harder because you have to learn new things. And so if it's like, hey, guess what, guys, we're doing something else this year. It's like, man, I'm checked out. I can't, I'm stressed. I'm working overdrive. I just can't. There's too much going on in the world. So it cannot be cumbersome to implement. So it's got to have data tracking built in. It's got to be a flip of a switch to say, all right, in 30 seconds, my students can get into this and get moving. And then a credential is key too, because then it can show and prove what they've attained is actually true. Like they've shown that growth, right? They've attained those soft skills based off of that pre and post assessment. And again, I'm gonna share it with you. I'm gonna share with you our program. And there are other tools out there. What I wanted you to see though is, again, that process of that it's possible to assess and teach soft skills. And if you use the right tools, us being one with Conover Company, then you'll be able to implement that with fidelity. Okay, and so let me share with you exactly what I mean. So the web portal that I'm going to log into as an administrator is my fake little demo account that I use all the time. So I'm going to log in as administrator, and I'm going to pick on, I'll just pick someone. Yeah, I see Dave. Dave said this presentation is really good. So I'm just going to, he's like teacher's pet now. I love it. So like, I'm going to create Dave. I'm going to say, all right, Dave, let's go in here, right? And I'm going to create you as a user. And I'm going to assign the workplace readiness program, which is our soft skills program. So that's it. That's it. 15 seconds, whatever that took, 20 seconds. Dave is a student who's now ready to go. Simple. Now Dave logs in. I don't care if it's in person or remote. Dave logs in the exact same way, just like you and I go to facebook.com or linkedin.com or gmail.com. We all go to the same place. We just enter our different credentials. That's how we access our stuff, right? So now Dave logs in. Again, I don't care physically on what device, doesn't matter. And Dave now goes through the workplace readiness program. The soft skills program begins the process. So this is from the user side, the user lens. So implementation time is near zero. Simple. And what the workplace readiness program covers is all of this. Matt, if you want to throw this in the chat, you can. I'm going to obviously follow up with an email too with this, but the workplace readiness program covers these things. Each one of these series, the job readiness series, the job seeking series, and the job keeping series, all three series follow that same process. The pre-assessment to identify where a user is at, curriculum skill enhancements to teach based off that assessment, and then post-assessment to document growth. So each three series, it's separate, if you will, but each one is going to be an assessment, and then a curriculum, and then a post-assessment. So let's go ahead and take it. So here are the 3 series up top here, right? So I'll start with job readiness. And so this is from the user side. And so if I go through this, I'm going to ask, the system is going to ask questions. And again, every user has their own login, works on any device. It's got full audio to read everything aloud should you work with non or low readers or ESL students. So everything's there and they can start and stop. It's self-paced. It's a true asynchronous, right? There's asynchronous, which is self-paced on your own, and then synchronous, which is, in sync with the teacher instructor teaching the class, like live or recorded, but you got to log in a certain time. But this is true asynchronous because behind the scenes, what's happening is our system's tracking and scoring everything. So the instructor accounts manage things behind the scenes, and then our system does all the legwork. They do all the heavy lifting. And then once they get through this assessment, automatically and it's got 64 questions. Again, they can start and stop. But once they finish, it's going to trigger a graph to show their weak points and their strong points. And then if 70% is the cutoff, so if they get above 70, they test out. If they go below 70, then they're going to go through that curriculum. So obviously I flew through this, so I'm under 70 on everything. So it's going to assign all the curriculum. So now I go through the instructional content. So now I can go through, let's just start at the top. Now I go through attitude. And we're going to have these short videos, 30 to 60 seconds, breaking down these concepts and all of the respective competencies. Like this one's what, 39 seconds. Okay. And so they can go through each one of these competencies one by one. And then we call them checkpoints, but there are checkpoints in here to make sure they're watching the videos and paying attention, right? All of the stuff is there. And if they are flying through it and say, oh man, I didn't watch that video, we'll just go back and review. And here's the content again. And then they can answer the questions based off the content. So each one of these pieces, I'm just clicking on attitude, right? But each one of these pieces is going to be a little over an hour of work. Matt just said my screen is frozen. That's terrible. Okay. There we go. See? Okay, we're back. So I apologize. So I'll start from after the assessment. So since we got stuck on the assessment, I'll jump in and continue on with this piece. So after the assessment, it's going to trigger the instructional content. All right. So if we go into, like, I just went into attitude, but communication, this is going to be these short videos. 30 to 60 seconds breaking down these concepts. So just, I don't want to be redundant, but do you guys see my screen with the video now, or videos that I'm scrolling through? Awesome. Okay, good. But what happens is we have these videos and then we have these checkpoints. So we have them watch videos, understand these competencies, and then ask them questions based off of what they just saw, what they just read, what they just heard. And then they can answer these questions. And then at the very end of each one of these units, like communication or attitude, etc., then at the end of each one of these units, we're going to have a post-assessment to document growth. Okay, because when the administrator account logs back in, again, the biggest premise, there's two big takeaways from this. One is talking about the proven process of assessing, teaching, post-assessment, all of the research and development that we've done through this you can go to our website and check it out. You know, I always kind of joke, like, if you have trouble sleeping at night, just go there, download our research. There's your medication. If you're like me, or some people really love that stuff, and that's great. But download the research, look at all of that when we talk about a proven process. Okay, talk about all of the doctoral dissertations and research papers, and then tying it back to emotional intelligence and the need for these various competencies. So it's all right there. But the second takeaway is, as I share this program, it's truly asynchronous in the sense of there's really no heavy lifting for staff. Because again, even pre-pandemic, we were really struggling because there's so much to do. And so as we go through and track everything and score everything and document everything in our system automatically, the administrator accounts log into the system and they just reap the benefits. They just see the results. So we can see, okay, what did Dave work on? What was his score? What else does he need to work on? When did he last log in? All of that stuff's going to be saved inside of the system. So when we go through, we can identify what exactly is happening. Okay. Show the results. Obviously, did he earn the credential? Yes or no? The answer is no, because he scored under 70% on everything. But should 70% be there? That's how that works. Question on ballpark quote license. It's simple. This program is $25 per student at most. So the workplace readiness program with all three of these series, so the entire program, so everything, at most is $25 a user. The administrative accounts and licensing, that's all included. Technical support, that's all included. So it's at most 25 bucks a head, and then it goes down. We have some pretty large organizations using it, and it goes down in price to 20 bucks, 17.50, 15 bucks, 12.50 a student. So that's it, simple. And then the licenses, they never expire until you actually make an assignment to a student. So one of the big things that we've been hearing about, especially now as we run towards the end of the fiscal year, till June 30th for those funds that go till then, is like, hey, Art, we have some money left because COVID happened and we didn't really do the things that we said we were going to do, or what. You can buy the access now and use it well into the future. In fact, there's one organization that they kind of priced it out like, okay, hey, what would this be for like 4 years of my high school kids? And it's like, okay, well, times this much is your cost, it's 15 bucks a kid. Okay, this, and then they're set for the next 4 years for all their high school kids to go through it. And that's just how it works, because you guys control everything through the administrative reports. You guys can view the credentials. Okay, and so this is what the credential looks like. I just want to show a finished result. All right, date, and then obviously name here for the admin, and then you sign it. Put your beautiful John Hancock on it, and then you can also put your logo or your seal from the district or organization. You can upload your own logo up on here as well, and it'll show that. Someone asks, can students redo a topic if they do not gain the certificate? So yeah, the way that our system works is they take the pretest, right? And they have the opportunity to test out. So like Emily here tested out, she scored above 70 on everything. If they don't, then they go through the whole unit, right? So say for example, planning and organizing, she scored 50%. So she didn't get that, but she went through the curriculum and then went through the post test, and say she scored a 60%. So to answer your question, yes, they get one retake for every competency to get a 70% again. So in that example, Emily went through, got the 50 first, got the 60 next. Okay, she redoes it. She gets the 75. Beautiful. So now the third chance right there, right? She has that 75 on her credential, and she's earned that. So you can absolutely do that. All right. And then the next question, I think, Kathy, yeah, you asked that. Some people ask like, cool, can they do it again? Here's my recommendation. If they did it 3 times and they didn't get the score, they don't need our program. they need you to sit down with them and walk them through like, hey, well, let's talk about planning and organizing, like one-on-one intervention, right? Because to redo the same thing and expect different results, right? And but yeah, they get 3 shots at it. And then should you want to have them do it again, even if it's like a following year or whatever, which is possible, then you would have to pay for that. Yes, you'd have to do that. Dave says, if you recorded this, I need to provide to our admin. Yes, Brandy's recording the webinar. I'll get a copy, and I'll also send this. Like I said, I'm going to send a copy of the webinar, but I'm also going to share some additional resources like the brochure and then like a short screen recording video of our tools as well. And the presentation, because a lot of it obviously comes to do with the slide deck that I used. You'll have that as well. Cool. Well, I know usually these things last an hour, but I don't like taking advantage of time. I don't like, who was it at the beginning talked about looking busy? If you're on a webinar for an hour, you're looking busy, right? That made me chuckle. That's kind of how I am with webinars. I just end them, right? So here we are at 2:41 Central Time, and I'm finished, but I am absolutely able and willing to take your questions. In fact, I want to, should you have them. If not, you guys can go on your merry way and finish out your day and do what you need to do. But here is our website, our phone number, our social media channels. Kathy says, has this been used with industry? Yeah. So, and it depends on which program. We have obviously many different programs, but the workplace readiness program has been used in industry for mostly pre-employment. They'll use our assessment and then get their scores of their respective folks coming in. And then they'll use our curriculum and training should they hire that individual. Yep. And then there's also like a corporate version, which includes our like emotional intelligence program and whatnot. So. All right. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you all. Thank you so much for attending.